Welcome in, everyone. Ready for a deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic that's got everyone talking: extramarital affairs. And we're zeroing in on Telugu society, taking cues from a really insightful interview on ID Ladies Life. They were talking with Dr. K. Anitha, the professor and motivational speaker.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Anitha, she's a leading voice, especially on relationships. When she speaks, people really listen.
Totally. And she doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. Right off the bat, I was struck by how she approaches infidelity. It's not just about pointing fingers and saying it's morally wrong. She digs deeper. She sees it as a symptom of something else going on in the marriage: unmet needs, deep dissatisfaction.
Yeah, like she's encouraging us to look past the surface. Instead of just condemning the action, she's asking, what's at the root of this? What's driving this behavior? And that really sets the tone for the whole Ideal Ladies Life interview, don't you think? They're getting to the heart of how marriage dynamics are playing out in Telugu society today.
Exactly. And that analogy she uses, the cracked mirror, it really hit me. She was talking about the lasting impact of infidelity. Like, even if you try to fix it, the damage is done, the mark remains. It got me thinking, does our culture, especially in Telugu families, with all this emphasis on keeping up appearances, on presenting this perfect family image, does that actually make things worse? Does it sweep these issues under the rug?
That's a really thought-provoking question. And when she talks about unmet expectations, she's careful not to place all the blame on individual partners, right? Like, she brings up external factors. Think about the media, for example, how romance and relationships are portrayed. It sets up these unrealistic expectations of what love should be.
It's like we're bombarded with these idealized versions of love. And when those expectations clash with the realities of life, especially within the Telugu community where there's so much pressure to conform, it can be a recipe for disaster.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just think about it. In many families, there's this immense pressure to maintain family honor no matter what. So if someone is dealing with infidelity, speaking out can feel impossible, especially for women. It's like you're trapped
Between a rock and a hard place. And Dr. Anitha, she doesn't let our social circles off the hook either. She's saying that if friends and family don't step in, if we don't intervene constructively, we're actually part of the problem.
It's true. Sometimes silence can be deafening. Pretending it's not happening, turning a blind eye, it only makes things worse. There's that saying, it takes a village, right? Well, maybe it takes a village to support healthy relationships too. It really does take a village, doesn't it? And sometimes it feels like the village can make things worse without even realizing it. But what I find really interesting is how Dr. Anitha talks about the aftermath of infidelity. She doesn't shy away from the pain it causes. Not one bit. She uses some strong phrases, irreparable damage, talks about the ripple effect it has on entire families. It's serious stuff.
No kidding. She's definitely not sugarcoating it. But then she talks about the possibility of healing, even bringing a strained partner back. That caught me off guard, I have to admit.
Right. It's a tough balance. You have to acknowledge how serious the situation is, but you don't want to just give in to despair. And I think this is where Dr. Anitha's approach is really valuable. She emphasizes personal accountability. You're responsible for your actions. No way around it. But she also talks about the community's role in all this.
So it's not just about blaming the person who strayed, it's about offering support too.
Yeah, exactly. She's advocating for open communication and even intervention, but before things spiral out of control, she really wants listeners to think about the long-term impact on everyone involved, not just the couple, but their kids, their extended family. Weigh those short-term desires against the potential for real, lasting happiness and stability. That's deep.
It really is. It makes you realize how we as a society, even within the Telugu community, respond to infidelity. I feel like there's often so much judgment and shame thrown around, but not a lot of emphasis on actually trying to understand or heal.
100%. And Dr. Anitha tackles that head on, that tendency to just shame and ostracize. She suggests something different: positive reinforcement, reconciliation.
Whoa. Instead of pushing someone away, you're saying we should try to understand what happened.
That's what she's advocating for. It's kind of a radical idea, especially when you think about traditional Telugu values, choosing understanding and compassion over judgment. That's a big shift.
It really is. She talked about focusing on the root cause of the problem instead of just reacting to the symptoms. And it got me thinking about all those classic Telugu movies. The ones where the wronged wife just forgives her husband, no questions asked.
Oh, I see what you mean. That's just expected of her.
Yeah. And Dr. Anitha's challenging that whole narrative.
Yeah.
She's not saying forgiveness is impossible, but it can't be the starting point, right?
Exactly. It has to be a process. Like, it has to come from a place of genuine understanding, healing, a commitment to really rebuilding that trust. It's a journey.
It's not just slapping a Band-Aid over a wound that needs stitches.
Yeah.
It takes real honesty and vulnerability, and not just from the person who had the affair, but from their partner, their families, the community.
Right. It has to be a shared effort. And this is where I think her focus on communication is so crucial. She talks about open and honest dialogue between partners, even if, or maybe especially if it's uncomfortable.
Oh, totally. It's about creating that safe space where both people can be heard, where they feel understood,
Mhm.
which, let's be honest, isn't always easy, especially in Telugu families, right? There are power dynamics at play.
That's a really important point. Dr. Anitha acknowledges that sometimes those societal expectations, especially in more traditional families, they can actually stifle communication. It's like this pressure to keep up the facade that everything is perfect, even when it's falling apart behind closed doors.
That whole log kick a hinge
Mhm.
mentality, right?
Yeah.
What people say.
Exactly. And she's pushing back against that. She's saying create space for authenticity, for vulnerability in your relationships. It's not easy, it takes courage, but she believes it leads to stronger relationships, greater fulfillment, a healthier society it's worth striving for.
It's about rewriting the narrative, isn't it? Like shifting from judgment and shame to understanding and support. And it's not just talk. She gives real advice for how to make that happen.
She does. And one of the things that really stuck with me was her advice for what to do if you think someone you know might be having an affair.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Like, where do you even begin? It's such a delicate situation. You want to help, but you don't want to overstep. What does she say?
She's pretty clear about avoiding the gossip route. Like,
Yeah.
no spreading rumors or publicly shaming anyone. That's a big no-no. She suggests a different approach entirely.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What's the alternative to, like, sounding the alarm bells?
Empathy.
Whoa. So,
Yeah.
not exactly what I was expecting. Does she really think that's enough?
She's definitely advocating for a more compassionate approach. So instead of judging from a distance, she suggests having a conversation with the person directly.
Oh, wow. So just, like, go up to them and be like, hey, I think you might be having an affair.
Well, not exactly. It's more about expressing your concerns, but doing it from a place of genuine care. Like, hey, I've noticed some things and I'm worried about you. And then maybe suggesting they seek help if they need it.
Okay, so it's more about being a supportive friend or family member than playing relationship police.
Gotcha. That's a good way to put it. It's about recognizing that we all make mistakes, and sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is offer understanding and support.
It's funny, right? You see infidelity depicted so often in Telugu films, but I can't think of a single one where they handle it this way.
That's true. It's always so dramatic, so much blame and anger. But Dr. Anitha doesn't let us forget about someone else who's deeply affected by all of this, the kids. She talks about how much they pick up on, even if they don't fully grasp what's going on. Yeah, it's true. Kids are really perceptive. They sense the tension, the sadness, even if they don't have the words for it. It's heartbreaking.
Absolutely heartbreaking. It's like the adults might be the ones directly involved, but the children are right there in the middle of it, feeling the impact.
Exactly. Dr. Anitha makes a point of saying that parents need to protect their kids as much as possible. Like, prioritize creating a stable and loving environment even when everything feels chaotic.
That's a tall order, especially when you're going through something this difficult. How do you even begin to talk to a child about infidelity?
She suggests being honest, but keeping it age appropriate. Like, you don't want to burden them with details they're not ready for, but you also don't want to lie or be evasive.
It's a tough balance to strike, protecting their innocence while also acknowledging their reality.
Definitely. And Dr. Anitha emphasizes how important it is for parents to present a united front whenever possible. Even if their own relationship is falling apart, they need to come together for the sake of their kids.
That must take so much strength, to put your own pain aside and prioritize your children's well-being like that.
Absolutely, it's not easy. But throughout this whole interview, I was struck by Dr. Anitha's belief in the power of forgiveness. She doesn't present it as this easy solution, but as a process, a journey.
A journey that takes work.
Exactly. It's not going to happen overnight, but she really believes it's the path to breaking free from all that pain and resentment.
It's like she's saying, this awful thing happened. It hurts. But you don't have to let it define you or your future.
Yeah. She's offering a path forward. It might be difficult, but it's possible. And honestly, that's a really powerful message.
It really is. It's a good reminder that even when things feel impossible, hope remains. Dr. Anissa acknowledges just how complicated relationships can be, but she still believes that healing, forgiveness, even growth are all possible, even after infidelity, even after heartbreak.
That's a beautiful thought. Choosing hope over despair, understanding over judgment, love over hate.
It's a lot to process. I feel like this is one of those conversations we could continue for hours and still only scratch the surface.
You're right, there's so much more to unpack. But I think Dr. Anita has given us a good place to start, a new framework for understanding this complex issue.
She really has.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling she's sparking some much-needed conversations in Telugu homes and communities. As always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll leave you with this. Dr. Anisa reminds us that change begins with each of us. So what's one small step you can take today to build stronger, more understanding, more compassionate relationships in your own life? Until next time, keep those minds curious and those conversations flowing.